Colorado is one of the most reliable places in the country for anyone looking to live off the grid. For starters, sunlight is remarkably consistent throughout most regions, with many counties averaging well over 300 bright days a year. That kind of predictability is exactly what makes solar systems dependable, especially for retirees who need stable monthly costs. Rural population density is also low in large portions of the state, which means fewer restrictions, fewer neighbors, and the space to build and live at your own pace. And then there's the terrain itself. Colorado offers everything from level prairie to high desert valleys to mountain forest, giving off-grid buyers a chance to choose the climate and landscape that best fits their long-term plans. Here are 7 dirt-cheap areas of land for sale scattered across the state, each one offering a different type of off-grid opportunity. The only question now is, which one is right for you? 40 acres in southeastern Colorado feels noticeably different from land in the mountains or the high desert. In Bent County, the horizon stretches so far out that the land almost encourages you to think in long-term plans. The property lies in a part of the state where the terrain is broad and level, allowing you to walk a straight line for several hundred yards without needing to navigate rocks, gulches, or sudden drop-offs. That uncomplicated terrain is one of its strongest qualities. You're not fighting the land to get started. Because the soil is firm and the vegetation is mostly short prairie grass, the parcel can accommodate a surprising range of setups. Someone wanting to place a manufactured home, a small stick-built cabin, or even multiple outbuildings could do so without hiring earth-moving contractors. It also makes it easier to bring in deliveries, haul water tanks, or set up a simple road base. With 40 acres, it's possible to position your home deep enough into the parcel that dust from the county road doesn't reach you, and you can maintain substantial privacy without adding fencing. The climate here is dry, and that dryness shapes how people live off-grid in this part of the state. Water is the primary planning element. Wells vary widely, and while some owners manage to drill productive ones, many prefer the reliability of hauled water paired with a 1,500 to 3,000-gallon cistern. The good news is that since the property sits on smooth, flat ground, installing a cistern and building a water hauling pad is about as easy as it gets in Colorado. Electricity usually doesn't reach this far into the prairie, so solar becomes the natural choice. Fortunately, Bent County is one of the more consistent solar regions in the state. With virtually nothing blocking the sun, even a modest system produces predictable daily output. That reliability is a major selling point for buyers in their late 50s or 60s who don't want to deal with fluctuating energy systems. Because the land is so open, wind does travel freely across it. For some people, that becomes an opportunity. Hybrid wind-solar setups perform well here, especially during winter when wind speeds increase. For others, the wind means choosing a building site near a natural dip or creating a small windbreak with fencing. The nearest supply towns aren't close. Most require a half-hour drive or more. But that distance is part of what keeps the area quiet. The land lends itself to a lifestyle built on planning ahead. Grocery runs once a week, propane refills on a schedule, and larger projects spread throughout the warmer months. But if you want straightforward land where you can spread out and build without complication, you can have it for just $12,500. This 5-acre parcel sits between 7,700 and 8,000 feet, in a region known for its intense sunlight, dry air, and wide, unobstructed views. Compared to Bent County, the land here is more uniform in texture. Sandy soil, sparse vegetation, and long straight expanses that let you see weather approaching from miles away. The practical advantage of this kind of terrain is predictability. You know exactly what type of surface you're building on, how drainage behaves, and where the best solar exposure lies. 5 acres is enough space for a modest homestead without overwhelming upkeep, yet still roomy enough to orient a home, shed, and solar array with intention rather than necessity. You can place your structure anywhere on the lot without much thought for slope or rock disruption, because there is very little of either. While wells do exist, yields vary too much to rely on a new drill without research. Most off-grid residents take the reliable route, hauled water. And because the valley floor is so flat, hauling water onto the property is straightforward. Trucks can turn around easily, and cistern installations require minimal ground preparation. The dryness of the region also means maintenance stays simple. Mud buildup and seasonal ruts are much less common here than in wetter regions. Solar performance is arguably the strongest point of this parcel. Castilla County often records some of the highest solar indices in the state. Even a small system of 4 or 6 panels can sustain a single or two-person household, especially if cooking and heating rely partly on propane. Retirees who want predictable power bills often choose this county specifically because sunlight is so reliable. The sandy soil drains quickly, which benefits building foundations but challenges direct planting. Fortunately, greenhouse gardening does well here due to high sunlight and minimal shade. Small livestock can also thrive, though wind fencing or windbreaks become useful, especially for chickens or rabbits. The nearest towns, Blanca, San Luis, and Fort Garland, offer fuel, groceries, and basic services. They're not close enough for frequent quick trips, but they're within manageable driving distance, making this parcel practical for someone who wants a balance between affordability and usability. For buyers who prefer a simple, low-maintenance homestead that doesn't require constant landscaping or tree management, this 5-acre property offers a clean, dependable starting point. It's yours for the low price of $7,499. These two adjoining lots combine into a 13.64-acre property that offers more flexibility than most single parcels in this price range. Located in the rolling outer terrain of Fort Garland, the land differs from the flat San Luis Valley floor. Here, the ground naturally rises and lowers in broad swells, giving the parcel character, areas slightly higher than their surroundings, spots that catch morning sun differently, and natural recesses shielded from wind. This kind of terrain benefits off-grid planning because it gives you choices. If you want protection from the wind, a shallow depression offers a natural place to position a home. If you want an elevated building site for better drainage or for capturing mountain views, the property provides those options too. Yet the slopes are mild enough that you're not dealing with the engineering complications common in mountain lots. The vegetation is mostly sagebrush and native grasses, with occasional pockets of piñon or juniper depending on micro-elevation. This is helpful for two reasons. First, the scattered vegetation creates natural windbreaks, making the land feel less exposed than the valley floor. Second, the slight vegetation variation helps identify the property's healthiest spots for placing gardens, trees, or other plantings. Water strategies here resemble the rest of Castilla County. Cistern-based systems are the norm for part-time or early-stage use, while wells become worthwhile if a buyer intends to live here year-round. The land's gentle contour helps with water placement because cisterns can be tucked into slopes for added insulation and stability. And because the land is elevated relative to the valley floor, sun exposure is strong. This makes power generation extremely efficient on this property. The natural curvature of the terrain lets you angle panels to reduce wind load, and the lack of tall trees ensures all-day sunlight. The defining advantage of having two parcels is how it shapes long-term use. Many off-grid residents like to separate living space from utility space. With 13.5 acres, you can use the first lot for your residence and the second for workshops, equipment storage, or agricultural projects. This keeps your home area clean and uncluttered while still giving you the freedom to expand. Access roads vary depending on weather, but in dry seasons they're generally straightforward. A high-clearance vehicle is useful, but not mandatory year-round. If you want off-grid land with room to grow, land that accommodates more than just a single structure, this pair of parcels stands out as one of the most flexible opportunities in the region. Both of them can be had for only $10,000. This three-parcel combination totaling 20.3 acres offers one of the largest contiguous off-grid opportunities in the valley at an accessible price. Unlike the Alyssum Circle properties, which have subtle elevation changes, this tract is almost uniformly level, making it ideal for buyers who want clean, uninterrupted acreage for large-scale planning. What makes 20 acres appealing in an off-grid context isn't just size. It's how size influences options. With 20.3 acres of flat land, you can develop sections independently without worrying about crowding. A home can sit far enough from the road to minimize dust and noise. A greenhouse can occupy a south-facing edge with maximum sun exposure. A workshop or RV pad can sit at the opposite end of the property. You have enough distance to keep each function separate and efficient. The land's openness also benefits people looking to raise animals. Chickens, goats, and even a small number of larger livestock can be managed comfortably because the acreage allows for multiple fenced zones. Wind fencing becomes important here, not because the wind is extreme, but because the openness means it travels without many natural barriers. Fortunately, with 20 acres, you can plant fast-growing windbreak trees along the edges without crowding the interior. Water strategy follows the familiar pattern for the valley: cistern and delivery, augmented by roof catchment. On 20 acres, placing a large cistern system is easy, and the flat terrain makes delivery trucks' access simple. Wells are possible but require more research because of the acreage's distance from main groundwater pockets. And with no shading obstacles, you can build a solar field of virtually any configuration. Many people choose dual-array setups, one fixed and one adjustable for winter. Daily life on this property revolves around self-sufficiency. Supply towns are the same as with the other Costilla parcels, roughly half an hour away, so you plan weekly grocery runs. Propane delivery is common, and with 20 acres, tank placement doesn't interfere with your main living space. This is the kind of land for someone who wants a broader project, whether that's a hobby ranch, a substantial workshop, or simply space to insulate themselves from the crowding that has become normal in other parts of the country. At just $12,900, you get 3 parcels for the price of 1. Coming out of the San Luis Valley and stepping into the Pagosa Springs region feels almost like switching states entirely. The land changes faster than you expect. The air cools, the vegetation thickens, and the ground begins to take on the uneven contour of mountain country. This 1.5-acre parcel sits in that transitional zone where the forest starts to take over, offering an off-grid environment that relies less on open sun and more on the natural protection of trees. The first thing most buyers notice is the vegetation density. While the high desert parcels offer wide sightlines and sun exposure, Pagosa's wooded lots bring privacy by default. The trees, most of them pine and oak varieties depending on the exact elevation, interrupt wind, create pockets of shade, and give you natural separation from any neighbors who might be in the area. You don't have to install privacy fencing or berms. The land handles that for you. Because the parcel is only 1.5 acres, the layout requires more deliberate planning than a large tract. You can't simply build wherever you feel like. Instead, you choose a building spot based on slope, drainage patterns, and sunlight windows between the trees. Many owners treat this style of land like a puzzle. Walk it slowly, look for the flattest stretches, examine where water runs after rainfall, and decide where a cabin will sit naturally without excessive earthwork. Well, depth in this part of Archuleta County tends to be more reliable than in Costilla or Bent, which encourages some buyers to drill rather than rely solely on cisterns. Rainfall is higher here as well. That means catchment systems provide meaningful supplemental water rather than just a modest boost. For anyone used to desert parcels, the additional moisture can feel like a luxury, especially when maintaining gardens or trees. Solar is still feasible despite the forested conditions, but it requires a more strategic approach. A clearing usually needs to be cut, or the system is placed on a small rise where sunlight reaches more consistently. At this elevation, the sunlight may not be as constant as the valley floor, but it's still strong enough to sustain off-grid power for a small home. Those who want simple, predictable electricity often pair solar with propane appliances or a backup generator stored in a sound-insulated shed. One advantage unique to this parcel is its proximity to Pagosa Springs, a town that offers far more consistent amenities than many of the desert areas. Groceries, fuel, medical services, and hardware supplies are all accessible without long travel times. For an older buyer who likes off-grid living but prefers predictable access to services, this strikes a comfortable balance. You can enjoy a peaceful wooded retreat without signing up for the isolation of remote prairie. The biggest consideration is winter. Snowfall is regular and often substantial. Anyone planning to live here year-round must expect snow removal, heating management, and vehicle readiness to become regular parts of life from late fall to early spring. Yet, for those who prefer forested landscapes and cooler temperatures, winter is simply part of the rhythm. In short, this parcel suits buyers who want a compact wooded off-grid setting, something manageable in size, protected by trees, and backed by a nearby town that makes rural living easier to maintain as the years go by. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, this land is available to you for just $12,500. This parcel is the smallest of the group, roughly a fifth of an acre, but small size doesn't necessarily mean limited opportunity. In fact, for some buyers, especially those who plan to live alone or maintain a minimal footprint, a parcel like this can be exactly what they want: low maintenance, low overhead, and located in a region where basic infrastructure is closer at hand. Colorado City sits along the southern stretch of the Front Range, and while it's surrounded by open, undeveloped land, the town itself has a level of plotted organization that high desert counties don't. Streets are mapped, drives are documented, and parcels have clear boundaries even if many remain vacant. This gives the land a semi-developed feel, making it easier to understand how utilities, access, and long-term use might evolve in the area. The lot's size naturally sets the tone for the style of off-grid living it supports. You won't be raising livestock or operating a large workshop here, and the land doesn't lend itself to sprawled-out arrays of equipment or long-term agricultural projects. Instead, the strength of this parcel lies in its leverage on compact living. A tiny home, small cabin, or RV-based setup fits neatly without crowding the remaining yard. With a footprint between 300 and 600 square feet, you would still have room for solar equipment, a small storage shed, and a garden bed or two. Because this area sits at around 5,800 to 6,000 feet, winters are milder compared to mountain regions. Snowfall still happens, but not on the scale that makes monthly life cumbersome for older residents. The ground remains firm most of the year, making access much easier for small vehicles than in the rugged, rocky counties further west. Pueblo County has stricter water regulations, and small lots rarely justify the cost of drilling wells. Hauling water or using a cistern setup is the typical approach. The manageable size of the property makes cistern systems convenient. Hauling 500 to 1,000 gallons at a time keeps you supplied for weeks, especially if your consumption is moderate. Solar conditions are strong due to the open exposure and lack of tree cover. A small 1.5 to 2 kilowatt system often covers the needs of a well-designed tiny home, and many residents reduce electrical loads by switching to propane for heating and cooking. Because this parcel doesn't sit deep in rural territory, noise and access remain predictable, making delivery of propane or water easier than in isolated desert sectors. The proximity to Interstate 25 gives an advantage that most off-grid properties cannot match. Groceries, hospitals, hardware stores, and fuel are all far more accessible from this parcel than from the remote counties. That alone can make a tremendous difference to someone in their late 50s or 60s who wants independence but does not want high-risk isolation. What this lot lacks in acreage, It makes up for in ease of use and day-to-day practicality. For someone who sees off-grid life as a minimal, efficient lifestyle rather than a large-scale homestead, this small foothold offers exactly the right amount of land without overwhelming responsibility. At just $2,500, you'd have your own little slice of freedom. This 2.63-acre property near Fort Garland occupies a middle ground that many buyers find ideal. Not too large, not too small, and manageable in both cost and upkeep. It's the kind of parcel that supports real off-grid living without demanding the physical workload of a 20 or 40-acre spread. For someone planning to retire or downsize, those factors matter just as much as location. The terrain here is some of the more user-friendly in the Fort Garland area. Elevation sits around 8,000 feet, but unlike the steep mountain regions to the north or west, this land mixes gentle slopes with broad, workable sections. That combination creates a forgiving building environment. You can find natural paths for foundation placement, slight rises that help with drainage, and lower pockets suitable for garden beds or sheltered utility setups. What distinguishes this parcel from more remote Costilla County land is its closeness to established roads and nearby communities. Since Fort Garland is just a short drive away, you're not isolated in the same way as a high-desert homestead 30 miles into the backcountry. This matters to older residents who prefer to manage supplies, medical visits, and equipment maintenance without committing to long or unpredictable travel each time. While no well is guaranteed, this area often yields more consistent groundwater than the sandy portions of the valley floor. That makes drilling a viable choice for someone planning longer-term residence. And if a cistern remains the chosen method, the land's shape provides several natural spots where a tank and pad can sit discreetly without interfering with the home site. With minimal tall vegetation and a clean southern horizon, the property supports a fully off-grid energy setup without needing heavy clearing. A 3 to 5 kilowatt solar power system aligns well with the energy profiles of older residents who tend to have stable, predictable usage patterns. Propane remains a reliable complement for heat and cooking. Because the acreage is modest, upkeep remains within reason. You're not clearing long perimeters or maintaining multiple outbuildings unless you choose to. Most owners place a home near the center, a greenhouse or shed nearby, and leave the remaining acreage open for airflow, walking space, or low-maintenance natural vegetation. It's a balanced setup that encourages self-sufficiency while recognizing practical limits. The biggest draw of this lot is its ability to serve as a long-term, realistic homestead. It doesn't require heavy labor or a large investment to make it usable. It doesn't demand off-grid experience to maintain, and it doesn't compromise the privacy and quiet that people seek when moving into rural Colorado. For anyone wanting a place to age comfortably while still maintaining independence, this 2.63-acre property checks every essential box. All things considered, this lot is a bargain for $39,000.